I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. Most people pass through the cafe without noticing the kid in the corner with the laptop that's always more closed than open. I liked it that way, background noise of the milk steamer, half conversations drifting from strangers, the sound of cups clinking when someone else was finished with their day. It gave me cover to sit there, pretending I had somewhere to be. That afternoon, I was already on my second refill when she walked in. She had the kind of presence that made the air shift without anyone pointing it out. A dark coat draped neatly over her arm, hair pulled back too carefully to be careless, and that slight pause at the counter, like she'd been here before but hadn't quite decided if it was still hers. I noticed her eyes land on me for a moment longer than strangers should. I lowered mine, fiddling with the lid of my paper cup until it squeaked against the rim. When the barista asked for her name, she said it the way teachers announce roll call, clear, firm, like she'd been saying it her whole life. It clicked a second later. I knew her. Or I used to. Mrs. Callahan. My high school English teacher. I hadn't seen her in years, but she looked almost the same, except sharper, somehow. Lines near her eyes that made her look both more serious and, unfairly, more inviting. She ordered a black coffee, no sugar. I remembered she used to drink from a steel thermos in class, something that smelled faintly burnt. I kept my head down, pretending to scroll through my phone, until I heard her voice again. She stopped, then tried again, tilting her head like she was dusting off a memory. Daniel, right? I looked up, slower than I meant to. Yeah. Hi. My voice cracked on the hi, like I was 16 again. Her smile wasn't wide, but it held. You were in my sophomore lit class. Sat by the window. Guess I wasn't as forgettable as I thought, I muttered. She let out the kind of laugh that wasn't loud, but enough to feel in your chest. Not quite. We didn't say anything after that. She stirred her coffee though she hadn't added anything to it, while I pretended to check a notification that didn't exist. The silence wasn't heavy. Just noticeable. When she finally picked a seat, it wasn't across the room. It was the table near mine, close enough that I could hear the scratch of her pen across a notebook. I caught myself watching the way her fingers curled around it, how she pressed the edge of her palm against the page like she was afraid of smudging her own thoughts. At some point, she looked up, catching me mid-stare. I panicked, flicking my eyes toward the window, then down at my coffee. You still write? She asked. I cleared my throat. Not really. Haven't in a while. She nodded, like she understood more than I said. Then, softer, almost to herself, that's a shame. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, her expression tightening before she flipped it face down. Wedding ring catching the light as she moved. I noticed. I wasn't supposed to. By the time I checked the clock, an hour had slipped by without either of us leaving. My coffee was cold, her notebook page barely filled. Still, neither of us packed up. When she finally stood, she gave me that same measured smile. It was good seeing you again, Daniel. I nodded, words stuck somewhere in my throat. She walked out, coat over her arm, notebook under the other. I thought that was the end of it, until my phone buzzed a minute later. A number I didn't have saved. Don't tell anyone you saw me today. The message sat on my phone like it was heavier than the device itself. Don't tell anyone you saw me today. No name attached, but I didn't need one. For a week, I didn't go back to that cafe. It wasn't fear, exactly. Just the unsettled feeling of carrying someone else's secret without asking for it. But habits pull harder than hesitation. By the time I walked back in, the barista didn't even have to ask, just slid me the refill before I found my seat. And there she was again. Mrs. Callahan. coat folded, notebook open, ring glinting under the overhead lights. This time, she looked up first. Daniel. It wasn't a question. Hi, I said, quieter than I meant to. For a while we just shared the space. Her pen moving across the page, my fingers tracing the rim of the paper cup. The silence didn't feel accidental anymore. It felt chosen. She broke it with something I didn't expect. You used to write short stories. You read one aloud once, remember? About the man who couldn't go home. I blinked at her. The memory was foggy, but real. I'd forgotten it until she said it. You remembered that? Her smile curved, faint and tired. Teachers remember things they probably shouldn't. Something about the way she said it, like there were more things she carried, tucked away where no one else could see, made me want to press further. But I didn't. Instead, I offered a truth of my own, small enough to feel safe. I still think about writing. Just don't think I'd be any good at it anymore. She stirred her tea, even though she hadn't added anything. That's not for you to decide. Not yet. Her certainty should have been comforting. Instead, it rattled something in me I hadn't touched in years. When her phone buzzed again, she flipped it face down. Same motion as before, same ring flashing in the light. This time, though, she caught me noticing. For a beat too long, neither of us looked away. I shouldn't have asked. Does your husband come here too? Her hand stilled on the cup. She let the silence stretch before answering, careful. No. He doesn't really come anywhere with me anymore. I swallowed, the weight of her words sitting between us. I thought about what it meant to be 24, sitting across from someone who once taught me Shakespeare and grammar, who now seemed to be quietly teaching me something harder, how loneliness can sharpen even the smallest moments into something you can't ignore. When she finally gathered her things, I stood without meaning to, helping her fold her coat over her arm. My fingers brushed the fabric near her wrist, just enough for both of us to notice. Thanks, she said softly. Not for the coat. Not really. I watched her leave again, the bell above the cafe door chiming too brightly. Later that night, lying in bed, I kept replaying that half-second touch. I don't know why that moment stayed with me, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next time I saw her, it wasn't at the cafe. It was in the grocery store, fluorescent lights buzzing, a half-empty cart in front of me, and there she was in the cereal aisle, studying boxes like they carried more weight than they should. She noticed me before I could decide whether to walk past. Her lips curved, quick, then softened. Daniel. It sounded different here. Less like recognition, more like something she shouldn't say out loud. We fell into step somehow, our carts moving down the same rows. Small talk filled the spaces, brands of tea, the absurd price of eggs, things you say when you're not supposed to be saying what you're really thinking. At one point she paused, reaching for something on the top shelf. Her coat sleeve slid just enough for me to see her wrist, pale against the dark fabric. I stepped forward before I could think, hand lifting to steady the box for her. Our fingers nearly touched. She pulled hers back too quickly, the box thudding into her cart. Thanks. It was too sharp, too final. A warning folded into one word. I nodded, pretending not to notice the way her shoulders tensed. We kept moving, but slower now. The silence wasn't comfortable like the cafe. It was brittle. At the checkout, I almost let her go first, but then the cashier waved us into the same lane. We stood side by side, items sliding forward, her notebook peeking out from the edge of her bag. Do you come here often? I asked, instantly regretting the cliché. Her smile flickered, brief. Every Thursday. Habit. I thought about how many Thursdays I might have walked past her without knowing. The idea lodged in my chest, heavy. When we walked out, the evening air was cooler than I expected. She pulled her coat closer, then glanced at me like she'd remembered something too late. You should. She stopped, shook her head. Never mind. I wanted to press. Ask what she almost said. But before I could, someone called her name from across the lot. A woman around her age, waving, walking quickly toward us. I stepped back instinctively, like we'd been caught doing something we weren't. Mrs. Callahan's face shifted, smile snapping into place, voice bright. Hey. I didn't know you shopped here. The friend glanced at me, curious, then back at her. Running into old students? Her laugh came too quickly. Yes. Just coincidence. The friend lingered, chatting, but my presence had already become background noise. I caught the way Mrs. Callahan's eyes darted toward me once, barely there, then away again. When the friend finally left, we stood by our cars in the quiet. She opened her trunk, set her bag inside, but her hands hesitated on the handle. I shouldn't, she started, then stopped. The space between us stretched thin. My chest tightened, waiting for a word that didn't come. For a heartbeat, I thought she might step closer. I felt it, the almost of it. Instead, she turned, brushing hair from her face. Take care, Daniel. I watched her drive off, headlights catching my reflection in the glass of my own car. So close. And not at all. It was late when I saw her again. The cafe had thinned out to two students arguing over notes and a man asleep against the window. I almost didn't notice her walk in until her coat brushed my chair. She didn't sit at her usual table this time. She slid into the seat across from me, setting her notebook down with a quiet thud. You're here a lot, she said. Not accusing. Just noticing. So are you, I replied. Her eyes lingered on mine longer than they should have. She stirred her tea, though she hadn't put sugar in. Her hands moved like she needed something to do with them. For a while we sat in silence, the kind that felt like both of us were circling around the same thought, waiting for the other to speak first. When she finally did, her voice was softer than usual. Do you ever think about how your life turned out? I hesitated, then nodded. More than I should. She let out a small breath. Me too. Her fingers tapped the cup. I was supposed to write a book once. Before I started teaching. Thought I'd be more than what I became. I wanted to tell her I understood. That I thought she was more, at least to me. But the words stuck. Instead, I offered, you were the first person who ever told me I could write. That I had something worth saying. Her head lifted slightly, as if the memory surprised her. Then she smiled, faint but real. I meant it. The pause that followed was heavy. Not awkward, just full. I noticed her wedding ring again, the way it caught the dim light. She must have noticed me noticing, because she turned her hand inward, thumb brushing the edge of the band. I don't know why I still wear it, she said suddenly. Her eyes fixed on the table, not me. Habit, maybe. Or fear of what it means if I don't. The air shifted. Something in my chest pulled tight. I leaned forward before I could stop myself. You don't seem happy. Her eyes flicked up, sharp, searching. For a second, I thought I'd crossed some invisible line. But then her expression softened, like she'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud. I'm not, she whispered. The words hung there, fragile, dangerous. Neither of us moved. The clink of a spoon from across the room felt too loud, too real. I imagined reaching across the table, just once, just enough to feel if her hand would stay or pull away. My fingers curled against my knee instead. She looked at me like she could read the thought anyway. A long stare, a half-smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Daniel," she started, then stopped. The silence after was longer than any sentence she could have finished. And in that silence, I wondered, was she asking me to say something? Or warning me not to? I couldn't tell. After that night, I expected to see her again. The way her words had hung between us, it felt like the start of something neither of us wanted to name but both understood. But then she stopped coming. Days passed. A week. 2. The cafe felt thinner without her, the table near mine staying empty like it was waiting. I still ordered the same refill, sat with the same untouched laptop, but the quiet was different now. Not background. Absence. On the 10th day, she appeared different. No notebook, no lingering pauses. Just a quick order at the counter, her coat still on, eyes fixed somewhere far away. I almost didn't approach her. Almost. "Hi," I said, careful. She startled, then forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Daniel. You're still here?" "Yeah," I managed. "Still here." For a second, I thought she'd sit. But she stayed standing, coffee in hand, shifting her weight like she was ready to bolt. "How've you been?" I asked. She hesitated. "Then, my son came home for a visit. College break." She paused, as if bracing herself. "He's your age." The words landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading, distorting everything I thought I understood. I nodded, throat dry. "That's good." Her smile faltered, then vanished. "I can't stay. Just wanted some air." And then she was gone, the doorbell jangling as if to underline it. I sat there for an hour after, staring at the space she didn't take. My chest felt tight, not broken but suspended, like waiting for a note that never resolves. The next few days, I kept rehearsing things I might say if I saw her again. Jokes to lighten it. Confessions to cut through it. But she didn't come back. Once, I walked past her building, half by accident, half not. Her window was lit, shadows moving inside. I thought about ringing the bell. My hand hovered near the buzzer, heart thudding. I didn't press it. Later, back in my room, I typed a message I couldn't send. "I don't care about the rules. I just want to see you." I stared at it until the words blurred, then erased them. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was raining the night I finally saw her again. Not a storm, just that steady drizzle that makes the streetlights look softer than they should. I hadn't planned on it. I was cutting across town, hood up, when I spotted her on a bench outside the library, coat pulled tight, notebook balanced on her lap. She wasn't writing. Just holding the pen like it had betrayed her. I almost walked past. Almost. But then she looked up, and there was no way to pretend I hadn't seen her. "Daniel," she said, voice tired. "Hi." I stood there a moment too long before sitting down beside her. The bench was damp. The air smelled like wet leaves. Neither of us spoke. The quiet pressed in, broken only by the hiss of passing cars. Finally, she sighed. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." My hands curled against my knees. "But you don't look like you want to be alone either." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. She didn't argue. We sat that way for a while, shoulder to shoulder but not touching, the rain tapping steady on the metal trash can nearby. Then, almost too quietly, "You remind me of who I used to be. Before all this." Her hand gestured vaguely, ring, marriage, the weight of years pressed into two words. I swallowed, throat dry. You make me feel like I could be someone more than I am now. Her eyes closed at that, lashes wet, and for a moment I thought she might cry. She didn't. She just let out a breath, shaky. I can't cross that line, she whispered. Not with you. Not with anyone. I nodded, though my chest ached with the words I didn't say. But then she turned, finally meeting my gaze. No smile this time. No mask. Just raw, unguarded truth. You mattered to me, Daniel, she said. More than you should have. The words cracked something in me. Not joy, not despair. Just release. I wanted to reach for her hand. I almost did. But instead, I let the rain soak into my jacket and stayed still, giving her the space she was too careful to claim. When she stood, I thought she'd leave without another word. But she paused, looking down at me, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. Her hand brushed my shoulder, barely there, just a touch to prove this wasn't imagined. Okay, she asked. I nodded. Okay. And that was it. No promises. No forever. Just two people on a bench in the rain, finally saying the quiet things out loud. Time didn't rush after that night on the bench. It stretched. Slowed. Settled into something less fragile, more real. I still saw her at the cafe Thursday mornings, 8:47 a.m., the way she always arrived just as the barista was wiping down the counter. She still ordered black coffee, no sugar. I still took my seat by the window, laptop mostly shut, pretending to type. But now, when she walked in, she didn't hesitate. She chose the chair across from mine without asking, sliding her notebook onto the table like it had always belonged there. We didn't need to fill every silence. Some mornings we spoke, about her son's classes, about the draft of a story I'd finally started. Other mornings we sat in companionable quiet, her pen scratching, my cup cooling. There was no declaration. No moment where the world shifted on its axis. Just small accumulations. She started bringing me tea sometimes, sliding it across the table with a dry, extra credit. I started remembering the exact way she liked her coffee when she forgot to order it. At some point, her ring disappeared. She never mentioned it, and I never asked. It wasn't absence I noticed, it was the way her hand rested on the table more freely, palm open instead of curled in. Once, on another rainy evening, we found ourselves back at that same bench near the library. This time, no hesitation. She sat close enough that our coats brushed. My hand found hers naturally, no performance, no rush. She didn't pull away. She just held on, thumb tracing lazy circles against my skin. It wasn't a grand confession. It was something quieter. Earned. I began to realize life didn't need to look different to feel different. My days still started too early, ended too late. Her papers still needed grading, her groceries still needed carrying. But between the routines, there was us, shared walks, black coffee cooling between us, an occasional touch on the shoulder that meant everything it didn't say. She still smirked sometimes, the same way she had in class years ago when someone stumbled over a Shakespeare line. Only now, the smirk was softer, like it belonged to me too. One morning, as she closed her notebook, I asked, "Do you ever think about the first time we saw each other again?" Her brow furrowed slightly, then she gave that quiet half-smile. Which time? The cafe, or the cereal aisle? We laughed, not loud, just enough to break the silence. I looked at her then, the steam of her coffee rising between us, the clock on the wall stuck at 8:47 like it always was. "I don't think I'll ever forget," I said. Her hand brushed mine across the table, deliberate this time. "Good," she whispered. And that was it. No fireworks. No music swelling. Just the ordinary made extraordinary because it was ours. 6.